Hi, everybody. Tom Chapman here. Back after a 2 week break. Just so you know, last week I decided not to give an update because things were happening so quick at the state level in Denver, and so much was happening all around that it was hard to figure out what to give you an update on as things were in so much flux. And so, if you were looking for that update last week, I'm sorry, but I have this for you now to tell you the state of things and where we're at moving forward. So here's what you need to know from our local. So reopening in the fall, that committee is still together. And thank you everybody that gave your input through the survey that I sent out. It was a great guiding document, and I know not everybody felt that their thoughts were caught completely on there, but it gave me the idea of what everyone was thinking, and it really helped guide a lot of what I was able to advocate for in the few meetings that we've had so far. I also read all of the comments that were included on the open forum at the end, and I took a lot of that into consideration too. So thank you, everybody. Just so you know, the conversation method has changed. We had one plan, and then according to an email I got last Saturday, the entire process went from we have until July 6th to come up with this great reopening plan to now we're trying to get it done before the end of next week. And the conversation has changed completely. This has come in some way from the governor's office, and that's what the email I received said from the district. That's also where the communication started in a recent meeting. But what I can't tell you is exactly what that guidance was. It's not being reported in any news outlet. It's nothing there. So we're going to hang tight. We're going to see what comes out of this. We're expecting more communication for the district starting next week, but I know that guidance has caused many districts to pretty much abandon all of their planning that they had done and go in a new direction. As I get more information, I will let you know. It may even include a short video addendum. The budget. Our local budget is likely to come to a vote this Monday, June 22nd. Actually, it has to because our budget is due to the state on Tuesday, June 23rd. This is unlikely to change from what the preliminary budget was that I discussed with you a few weeks ago. The state funding was a little better than we were expecting, but not a ton. And so the original projection I gave had around somewhere between $3 and $3.5 million in reserves being tapped. And because of the funding we are getting from the state, this is only a reduction of around $1.5 million in reserves. So that's good for our fiscal outlook here in the district. And that'll help us if things continue on past this next school year into the school year beyond. Based on this, contracts are likely coming after the budget vote. I don't have an exact date for you, just so you know. I mean, it was a big budget cut. We'll talk about it in the next page. There are no steps or lanes, but they'll talk about this at the board meeting on Monday. It looks like there will be some form of compensation, but just not the complete step and lane change. If you have questions, you can always reach out to me, or you can reach out to your building representative as well. Some updates from the state level so you're aware. So our legislative actions that we took, they were actually impactful from across the state to the point that on Friday and Saturday of last week, it looked like things were going to get shored up in the state budget that would have reduced the impact to every school district in Colorado, to the point that senators and representatives were starting to flip their stance because of what they were hearing from educators across Colorado. This was huge. Most of it didn't pass. It fell at the governor's office. The governor pretty much said, if you put things like this, like closing these loopholes and stuff like that, I will veto it. It will not pass. This is non-negotiable. And so that kind of hurt us because that was going to shore up a ton of funding. But what came to in the end is using the budget stabilization, it reduced every district's funding by 14%, overall $601.1 million across Colorado. That's a huge impact, and we're all going to feel it. Here's the issue. Amendment 23 passed in around 2000, which says per pupil revenue must increase with inflation. And so that was great. That looked like a way to shore things up. Well, then the recession came along, and they faced a budget crisis much like now, and they came up with what was then called the negative factor and has now been changed to the budget stabilization factor, which pretty much gives the legislature the power to go, we know this is what our Constitution says, but we're going to ignore it. And that's really how this was pulled off, was through this budget stabilization factor. It would be great if we didn't have that and we could come up with another more long-term plan to solve our education funding. But know that when people say the budget stabilization factor is what was enacted, this is what it is, and that's why every district is facing this, is because they just dropped it that way. That is not the best of news, but it's good to know that they did find some money from elsewhere and that we are not taking on as much of a financial burden in LPSD as was originally planned, but the outlook is still not great. One other thing that came out that'll be good for everybody to be aware is it was passed to be put on the ballot for this fall, the Gallagher repeal. Now, the Gallagher Amendment dates back to 1982, and it's this complicated thing that says, based on this formula and property tax value for both residential and business property, one of them can't outweigh the other. And it's more complicated than that, but pretty much what it says is because of that, the ability to raise funds in Colorado has been drastically hit. And it used to be, before 1982, most of the funding for schools came from property taxes, and now it comes from every hodgepodge source that we have. The Gallagher repeal would help solidify things for the following school year. So that's something positive to look forward to. You'll see it on the ballot this fall. I would encourage you to vote to repeal it. Some other things that you should be aware of, also appearing on the ballot from our state lawmakers, is House Bill 1427, which is a nicotine tax. This is a temporary tax. I can't remember for how long it's for, but it's a patch. It does not solve our issues that we have on our funding level. It's meant to maybe make the next year not as bad. Take that for what you will. It's a sin tax to try to offset some of the cuts to education, but it's minor. I'm only going to mention this once. Some of you have probably heard about Initiative 271. It's a rewriting of the tax code. It is not being pushed by state lawmakers. It is a citizen push. And you can find, I'll put the link to it in the description below if you're curious, or if you want to find some way to sign. It is being pushed as a ballot measure from the greater Colorado community, so it needs signatures to appear. You can look more into it, but essentially it gives a tax cut to 95% of Coloradans while also increasing funding to the school. This is not set up like the marijuana tax was, because we always hear, well, what about the marijuana tax money? That's its own boondoggle that was sold one way and did not achieve the end, and it got mired down in how you applied for that. And so many districts never even saw that. This is set up differently. If you're curious, I encourage you to see this below and to make your decisions. Now, this was one of the big things that kind of had me hung up, is I've been struggling with this myself for the last couple of weeks. Someone once asked, or the big conversation kind of has been, why now? Why, with what has happened in the news since the closure, has the entire country, even down to smaller communities, really started to go, this is an issue? And one of the ideas is because we all have time. We can't really go anywhere. We're trying to keep ourselves safe, so we have more time with our thoughts. And I'm one of those people. I was just as surprised with what happened to a number of black folks across the country over the last month. But because we're just here and the conversation is different, it caused me to reflect. And I'm not going to lecture anybody in this video, but I will say that as educators, we are part of the solution, and in some ways, we are part of the issues that we face. I'm not going to say anybody takes all of the blame, and I'm not going to put that on anyone's shoulders, but I do encourage you to use this time to reflect. I'm going to put some resources in the links below that I have found to be good readings to reflect, because I had a professor in college that said it really well. The only way to fight racism at all is to be an active anti-racist. You can't just passively try to be a good person. And so I've been trying to come to terms with that. I'm going to put some links in the description below. I encourage you to look into it. It's caused a great deal of reflection for me. Really, we need to keep in mind that, we don't have a lot of students of color in our district, especially compared to other districts. And that's a point of conversation as well. But it also should be notable that there are a few. And if they have not confided in you their experiences with racism in our walls, just know that it does occur. And while we may not always be aware of it, we need to help be part of that solution. So please take some time if you can and do what you can and do whatever reflection you need. And let me know if you'd like anything else. So what can you do with all of this stuff? What's going on? The legislative session is pretty much closed. Everything's pretty much done. We've wrapped up. So right now, I'm going to back down a little bit more. You might see a few updates as we know more about reopening or as major things come to light. But right now, we're just kind of in the building our membership and making ourselves even stronger. I encourage you to invite a new member, someone that you eat lunch with that maybe has never been a member, and you think, man, they would be a great addition to what we do here. The more we are, the stronger we are. There's individual perks and legal protection that we're all aware of. If you would like more information, you can reach out to us at lewis.palmer.ea@gmail.com, and we'll get you some of that information. But really, the more we are, it guarantees a stronger voice and a seat at the table. And this comes up, if you aren't at the table, you're often on the menu. And that's something we need to consider, is the stronger we are, the more representation we can have at district level decisions, and the more likely we are to get what we need for ourselves and our students. So I encourage you all to do that. There's forms available. You can email us at lewis.palmer.ea@gmail.com, and we'll get you the forms for whoever wants to join. But that's a big part of what we are, and we encourage more people to be with us. So that kind of ends things. Again, take care of yourself. It's another cool, stormy day, even though for the past 5 days we've been under fire weather warning and a lot of wind. But get outside if you can. Enjoy the smell of the rain or the grass after a rainstorm. Take time for your family. Build a hobby that maybe you've been ignoring for a while. Find a way to engage your mind. And I encourage you to seek stillness. I was talking to a friend about this the other day and how it's kind of nice sometimes to just go out and walk the dogs down the road without headphones or anything, and to just take some time for myself. So thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoy the week. As I get more information that's pertinent to you, I will make sure to update you on it. Otherwise, stay safe, enjoy your June, and we'll talk to you soon.